Hi, I'm Brian Hashimoto, and I'm a director and photographer.
Hi there, my name is Jonathan Potter. I'm a photographer and filmmaker.
And we are Fleeting Image. So today, Jonathan and I are talking about how the camera and video relate to movement in dance and live performance, both before COVID-19 and ideas in how we're navigating this world moving forward.
I have been working in dance and live performance for about 6 or 7 years now.
I used to be a performer eons ago. I did a lot of physical-based performance, but I have primarily been a director for the past 10 to 13 years or so.
My experience in relationship to dance and movement is pretty recent, but I've sort of fallen in love with the idea of dance as a individual moment in time. I think that movement and live performance have a huge amount of value to our artistic milieu at any moment, because it's one of those things that sort of helps us understand where we are in the world. So Brian and I started Fleeting Image. Well, it was kind of an idea that spurred out of the end of 2019.
Let's really help artists document that the work that they do on the live space and do it in a way that really encapsulates their composition, their design, their aesthetic, their movement, their dynamics, in a way that they can not just have it for archives, but use it for marketing and use it to sell shows, use it even cut it together for showing on demand later on.
We both just really love making pieces for artists and with artists.
I think actually my movement background has helped me think about the camera in a way that is complementary to movement. When I've done camera work for dance or a music video or a dance video, even recording a dance performance that's already been established, a lot of it is, for me as a camera operator, thinking about how I am working in tandem with the movement in front of me. Reciprocal movements and counter moves and things like that. It very much is a dance. You're involving the camera in the movement vocabulary. You're kind of complementing and balancing all of the dynamics, tempo, and rhythm that is in front of you and following the kind of energy and movement of the dancers as you go.
So Fleeting Image is kind of our personal artistic expression of how we can help artists share their work. And then COVID-19 hit and everything changed.
You know, before all of this, what we were doing was walking into spaces that were completely designed. They had sets, they had lights, they had an entire aesthetic built up, costumes, wardrobe, composition, and we were coming in and our questions were about, okay, like what angles do we put the camera at and how do we move them?
Who are we going to show this to? Like, what's the kind of camera angle that the venue wants to see for a performer, for a presenter video?
To highlight what has been already put together.
What makes really interesting, like our conversations fun for me, is that I think about it from the sense of what philosophically is the purpose of creating photography or video around live performance, because if the purpose of live performance is live performance, what are we doing? And now really what we're talking about is that, because that's still really important to keep track of, but also how are live performance artists creating art that can be shared in an asynchronous manner across the globe?
I think live performance arts are going through a massive identity crisis right now. And I both think that that's unfortunate for sure, but also on the very thin silver lining of all this, there's some really interesting and unique opportunities I think that can happen.
And the creation of a film or video around dance also sort of helps express the emotion of the moment, I guess. I'm sort of shamelessly addicted to TikTok, which is sort of like all about dance videos, and the idea of being able to sort of create a dance and then have other people do it, and everybody then has their own iteration of it, I think is really interesting. And so I think all of the social distancing and all the closing down of theaters and the closing down of dance programs and all of these things that's creating a physical distance from everybody is changing the way in which different people interact with dance and movement and their own bodies and other bodies and images.
I don't know. I guess in a lot of ways, I feel like small companies and individual artists are kind of in some ways primed for the moment because the overhead isn't there. You don't have to worry about your space necessarily. You can go anywhere and do, like you were saying, on TikTok. You can do it with a phone camera, and I think the kind of lowering that playing field, I guess, of production quality. People at home don't have this technology, and even us working with the technology we do have, everything now kind of requires either one person banding it, or two people at most that are 6 feet apart, you know? And I think like small operations like that are really primed to make some really interesting work very quickly.
I think as far as sort of the rest of the dance and live performance world, the choreographers that I know, some of them have been crazy gung-ho about creating, like doing live dance workout videos or like live performance videos or doing photo shoots over FaceTime. So I think there's a lot of resilience because once you kind of get into that mode of movement, I think it's hard to stop moving once you start, you know, there's that kind of thing. And so I think for choreographers and movement folks, there's just a certain degree of perpetual motion that's going to happen. And they just need to find ways of expressing that, and whether that's through their own personal, private, I'm doing this myself, or, you know, if they're partnering with us to create stuff so that they can push stuff out. I think it's going to happen.
You know, whether or not it's something Zoom based where you have the kind of, you know, multiple windows in a frame and messing with that format, which could be interesting, or doing what we would normally do, would go out with a single camera and record some choreography and cut it together with other images, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be a different world in 12 months.
One of the upsides of this, hopefully, is that companies, especially the larger ones, rethink how people can access their material. You know, again, even if it's archive footage, yes, encourage people to go see the live show, but you know, maybe you put it online the month after it closes for like a few weeks and do a pay-per-view sort of thing, so that people who want to see it, who couldn't afford to or didn't live there, you know, can still see some of the work that you do.
Even as we sort of start to see those connections fray a little bit and get tight or thin, I think that there's a lot of value in maintaining those connections.
You know, if some younger person right now has never seen a dance performance or a movement performance and sees somebody doing this weird acrobatic stuff, and they're like, oh wow, who is this person, what do they do? And they're like, oh yeah, well they're a performer in your town, you know, and keep in touch and follow them, and you can go see them live, and you know, I'm sure that'll change the relationship to the form.
And so I think in a certain way, it's kind of exciting because it's a really different perspective of how we're approaching all of these things moving forward, really.
I'm Brian Hashimoto.
I'm Jonathan Potter.
Thank you for your time.
We appreciate you spending the time with us.